Hello. Today I will be featuring the 0.6.4 Shimokaze. The ship, of course, has been buffed. Those that watched my torpedo reaction Shimakaze video should know how it has been buffed. Most importantly is the 12 km torps that I favor and consider the best ones for the current meta have been significantly changed. Well, significantly and significantly. Matchmaking isn't really the best for a Shima. There's 5 DDs, there's a Des Moines, there's a Lexington. These are all things that you don't want to see. You don't want to see radar cruisers, you don't want to see carriers, and the more enemy DDs there are, the more stuff there is spotting your torpedoes and actively trying to fight you. But we do run 12 km torps for a reason, and that's of course to avoid and counter these situations where matchmaking doesn't exactly favor you. Now the buff to the Shimakaze torps, especially the ones I use, is that the torpedo detection has been changed from 1.9 km to 1.7. It doesn't sound like a big buff, because it really isn't that big of a buff, but that doesn't mean that it isn't a change and one for the good, because it roughly gives you the same type of torpedo reaction as if you were running torpedo acceleration on your torps. Enemies have less time to react, and as a result you score a bit more hits. It's not going to be completely earth-shattering or changing in any way. RPF's pointing this way, that's why I'm scouting this way. But planes show up, and most importantly, a Des Moines is pushing between B and C. That's a very strong position for a Des Moines on this map, because he can radar both B and C, he can provide air cover. It's a nasty position, and I instantly turn away as soon as I see it, not just because the risk of being radared, but also because the planes are here. 2 reasons for me to actively avoid going this way. The B is being capped though, which means there's a DD in there, and RPF is pointing in the direction where he is, so I really want to drop some blind torps on him using RPF. However, my Kagero decides to slow down and stop in front of me. I'm not exactly being the most polite here, but I really don't understand what this guy is doing. I don't know why he slowed down and made that awkward move, but whatever, not a big deal. I use RPF to drop torps towards around the islands, because that's usually where DDs tend to park, especially since RPF is pointing that way as well. Oh, and this Kagero isn't running any camo. Guys, saving money by skipping camouflage on a DD is the absolute dumbest move you can make. I just need to point that out. The worst possible way to save money is skipping camo on a DD. DDs are the most reliant on having good camouflage, and you can get the concealment camo for 8k credits. That's nothing, especially at high tier. So trying to save money by skipping it is absolutely retarded. Don't do that. I do land a hit on the DD that was in B, once again thanks to RPF. This is a technique I've showed multiple times and recommended. If there's no better targets, use your torpedoes against your RPF target in massive wide spreads like I did there. Narrow spreads, of course, not wide spreads, since they are so easy to dodge, but that kind of big multiple layers of tight spreads in the general RPF direction is very powerful. There was a Fletcher in B that I hit, and our Shikaku spotted him right after and finished him off. So the RPF there resulted in a quick enemy DD kill, in this case a Fletcher, which was one of the biggest threats they had. Enemy team is pushing into A. RPF is pointing there, but I'm not entirely certain if it's the Amagi or if there's a DD closer. There's a high chance there might be a DD closer than the Amagi. And since I'm spotted and I can't spot him, it means that the Kagero is here, which leads me to quickly disengage. I don't want to be. I want to get away from these battleships if I'm gonna fight him. He does open up, which is stupid. He should have just kept chasing me and kept me spotted and let the battleships work on me. I pop my smoke here, but I actually don't fully stop. The idea here is, with the new mechanic, well, new, but these days you kind of fade in and out when you get spotted and unspotted, and I'm using that to my advantage here. Another reason was, of course, that my torpedo tubes were just coming off reload, and now that they're fully reloaded, I want to use them in between while fighting this guy without making it too obvious that I'm using them. So while I'm undetected, I do get spotted here, but at this point people often take it as I'm reacting to the DD popping up. So I drop the torps on the battleships behind him and I continue fighting. Most of the time this will catch people quite off guard, because, well, the average player will expect you to try to torp the enemy DD. but I'm not going to waste my torps on an enemy DD, especially on the Kagero, which I can take on quite comfortably. His gun power isn't that special. He finally smokes up and slows down, but it's quite late for him to do that, as I'm still able to hammer him with these guns. I've broken his engine, I've set him on fire. His broken engine makes it hard for him to stop in the smoke, and I finish off the kill. My torps in the background, meanwhile, scoring random hits here and there, which is exactly what I want. Now that the spotting DD is gone, I can finally start working on this. I do keep shooting the Shimakaze. Note that I repaired my broken engine because I want to keep up my speed, and I'm using speed boost to create distance. The Amagi damaged con, so I know I want to get a fire on him because it will burn for the full duration since he no longer has a damage con. Oh, you see how the fire covers the entire superstructure? That tells me he has fire prevention, so it's not worth trying to get a second fire on him. I just turn away. And this is of course one of the changes with the stealth fire system, is that you can easily fade out of spotting or it's very easy to tell when you can fade out of spotting. You saw how easily I got undetected there simply by turning away from him. That's because with the new spotting changes, your gun range determines your spotting distance. So if I'm unable to shoot them, I know I'm unspotted, so I just moved away based on my own range and quickly got undetected, which is what I wanted. Now there is a bit of a problem here. We're only 7 minutes into the game, and all 3 of my fellow DDs have already managed to get themselves killed. Well, one of them at least I knew wasn't running any camo, so that's obviously a sign that he really wasn't playing it too well, or knowing what he was really doing. But ultimately, as a DD, you want to survive as long as possible. DDs provide so much information in the form of scouting, just scouting enemy ships, scouting enemy DDs, scouting enemy torps. They can capture points, they can defend points. They are such a valuable tool. You want to try to survive as long as possible as a DD. And people dying this early makes the game so hard for you. So hard. We're 116 points to 629. We're down 6 ships against like 10. We are in a nasty damn position. But at least I've gotten rid of their DD count on this side, and there's a lot of battleships here. This is of course a pretty optimal hunting ground for Shimokaze, or well, I made it a optimal hunting ground by getting rid of the Kagero. Sometimes it's worth taking fights against enemy DDs just so you can give yourself a better chance in the future. This Sumo is pushing towards me, so he's probably the most predictable target for torps. He's also turning in, which makes him a pretty awkward target to try to torpedo. Rather, I just drop my torps towards the remaining 3 battleships in the back, because I have another chance at torping this Zuma later. I don't need to use my torps on him now, not just because he's the predictable target. They know there's a Shima here, so he's the guy in the front, so all the enemy ships expect me to be torping the guy in the front. So that's the reason why I instead go for the guys in the back. And of course, the Izuma is pushing in, which means I will get another chance to torpedo him. And looking at the minimap, just like with battleships, I recommend looking at the minimap every now and then. Between volleys and such, I recommend doing it a lot on DDs as well, especially the Shimakaze. I do land some hits on the Friedrich Grosse, which is always nice, hoping to land some hits on the other guys, but I think the Friedrich has spotted them now, so it's unlikely to score any more hits. Now the reason I'm moving here is, if you look at the minimap, you can see North Carolina is pushing towards this side. So this Izuma should soon start turning right, or from my point of view left, and angling towards the North Carolina, because if he keeps sailing straight like he is now, he's going to be giving broadside to the North Carolina. So I'm pushing to the side because I expect him to start turning soon. I'm closing the distance, I'm waiting for my torpedoes to reload, and making sure, and here he goes. You see he's angling towards North Carolina because he doesn't want to give him broadside, and this is the moment we were waiting for, this is the moment we were preparing for. You always want to plan ahead. You always want to plan not just how are you going to use your next volley, but then how can you make the best use of your volley right after that as well. Try to plan ahead as much as possible. In this case, he's giving me the broadside that I want. I'm at 6.4 km from him. My concealment is what, 5.9? So this is a pretty perfect distance. I don't want to shoot at him, I don't want to spook him, I don't want to give him any advance warning. And at this point, I'm smoking up, but once again, it's hard to notice someone smokes up like this on your side. I don't even want to shoot him to alarm him. I'm going to start working on the Friedrich Grosse. because the Izumo is pretty fucked at this point, let's face it. I got this massive spread. Of course, as I always say, you launch one volley of torps exactly where he's sailing, one slightly in front, one slightly behind. So if it even if it makes changes to his course, he's still gonna eat a bunch of torps, just like this guy did. And in the meantime, I use my smoke to work on the Friedrich Grosse. And he's the guy that you had to use his repair earlier. I forced it again by setting a fire. So now I'm gonna see if I can hunt him down and finish the kill, because we need points. Our team is really struggling on the points. And another reason for using the 12 km torps, I score a hit on the Iowa behind this Izumo. That wasn't even intentional, but when you have this additional range, you sometimes score this additional lucky unintended hits. And Shimakaze torps have a very high chance of flooding, and if you didn't notice, I did cause a flooding there. So, of course, that means any fires I cause on him now will be permanent. His guns are also pointed the other way, because he's fighting the North Carolina. So I utilize this to try to get some fires on him in the meanwhile. I'm also trying to push past him, because, well, I kind of want him to be placed between two different targets, because he'll have a hard time using his guns then. Once again, torps right at him, a bit to the left, a bit to the right. So if he sails straight, I have a very high chance of landing 1 or 2 torps. If he suddenly changes his course, well, I'm probably still gonna land 1 torpedo on him, even if he makes some very drastic changes. And he is in fact making a very drastic change. Right after I launch my torps, he turns hard right, which, if I had launched all of the torps at the white marker, would mean that he would have dodged my torps, but because I always take that precaution, a bit to the right, a bit to the left, I still score a torpedo hit on him. And that causes a flooding, and at this point he doesn't have his repair anymore, so we have a permanent fire and a permanent flooding on him. He does try to focus me, so I turn away. There's no point for me to stop shooting. First of all, there's a plane right above me. Second of all, he is within my normal spotting range, so it's better for me to just keep firing at him at this point. It's only when I start moving out of distance that it's worth to stop shooting. He's flooding though, and the North Carolina actually finishes him off, which is good. Ognaboy pops up. So the Ognaboy has a pretty big, well, he has an HP pool advantage on me, and he can cause a lot of damage. So here I make a quick, last request for this North Carolina. It's pretty obvious he's gonna go down. He seems to be on fire, and he doesn't seem to have any repair, so he's about to go down real fast here. And if I want to fight this guy, I want an advantage. So I say, pop your plane if you have one. I write to this North Carolina, and the North Carolina pops up his 2 fighter planes. Just before he dies, he gets them up. And why is this very important? Well, now with the help of these 2 planes, I can aggressively push into A, because if the Ognaboy does come and contest me, does come and fight against me, I can shoot at him. As soon as he shoots back, I can smoke up. And these 2 fighter planes that are hovering in the sky, you can see them both on the minimap, these 2 fighter planes will be spotting him for me. So in effect, they're acting as my spotters, as long as I make the Ognaboy fire first, so he gets the spotting debuff. So that's why it's very important to make sure the North Carolina popped his planes first, because now with the help of my smoke, any fight against Ognaboy, as long as I make sure I fight near these planes, you note how I enter the capture circle slightly from the south, and then as soon as I start capping, I turn hard left, because I want to be as close to these planes as possible, because they are kind of my beacon, my spotting tower, the advantage I can use in fighting other DDs. They only last 90 seconds, but that only as long as I need them to last. Another point I want to highlight here as well was when I fought the Kagera earlier. One of the reasons I also smoked up during the fight was because my torpedo tubes were still reloading. Now this is very important. If your torpedo tubes are mid-reload, meaning you have launched a volley and they're reloading the next torpedoes, if they break, you get a full duration reset, meaning if they are 10 seconds from reloading and they break, and then they repair themselves, or even if you use the repair consumable, they go on full cooldown, which means that you have to wait the full 1.5 minutes or whatever for the torps to come up again. So when you pick fights with the Shimakaze, to clarify, if your torps are fully reloaded, like mine are now, if my torp tubes were to break now, even if they repair themselves or use the repair consumable, they would still be loaded once the repair is done. However, if they are mid-reloaded, it completely resets the entire reload time. And that is very, very awkward if you've just waited more than a minute for your torps to get ready, and then you engage in a fight with someone and he breaks one or two of your torp tubes, and then suddenly you have to wait another minute for them to get ready again, or well, another 1.5 minutes, whatever. So that is very awkward, and that's not a situation you want to end up in. So you need to pick your fights with the Shima. If you are going to fight, you know you have to fight. Try to pick your gunfights either right after you have launched your torpedoes, or right after you have launched your torpedoes, or honestly that's probably the best possible times, or ultimately when you have your torps reloaded and you don't want to use them. You don't want, for example, you're fighting a DD but you don't want to use your torps. As long as they're fully loaded, you can fight him and you won't suffer any of these huge penalties. Worth noting, by the way, is that my torp reload is very quick now. I didn't check it fully, but it's something like 90 seconds. That's of course because I run Adrenaline Rush, which has kicked in at this point, giving me around 15% faster reload. And I run the torpedo reload, which gives me another 10%. So rather than the usual, I think 1 minute is at 39. It might even be more actually, the default reload time. I think it's around 1 minute 40 usually, so I've cut down the time significantly, which is very useful, and the reason of course why I run these two perks. But the point I made about picking your timing when you want to fight is very important if you want to keep up the constant torpedo cycle of pretty much launching. Ultimately you want to launch torps every time they are on cooldown, but sometimes of course it's better to wait for the optimal situations, and those are the times when you want to pick your fights. My torps, or possibly the Izumo's proximity spotting, forces the Ognoboy out of the smoke, and I'm able to pick him off. Sadly though, our Shikaku is very much out of position. If you look at the minimap, he gets ambushed by the Shimakaze. The Shimokaze does get killed by the secondaries, but he's got his torps off before, and losing our carrier has made winning this game now completely impossible. There's nothing really I can do. I ping where I expect the carrier to be based on where his planes has been going, and based on where my RPF is pointing, but there's really nothing I can do anymore to salvage this game. I've tried my best, but the huge disadvantage we were left at, because, well, 3 of our DDs died in the first 6-7 minutes, and when your DDs die that quickly, especially in a 4-cap domination map, where DDs are so important for securing and defending the caps, and in general against 5 DDs on the enemy side, where you want your DDs to be alive to scout the torps, when you lose all your DDs in a game like that, it's very, very hard to come back. But this is of course a weekend game, so it's weekend after a patch, so you shouldn't have too high expectations, which I didn't really have considering I'm playing solo. If you play in a division, you can probably carry, but solo you just need a lot of, you need to have some good RNG and not get teammates that just are fairly useless. Well, sorry, no real kind way of putting that. So the game does end. It doesn't matter if I cap this or don't cap it. They are ticking out on points, and anyways we only had 1 minute 30 seconds left, so it was almost impossible to catch up to them. Ultimately though, I did earn almost 750k credits in a tier 10 DD. That's always nice. 264,000 damage, 13 torpedo hits, 4 kills, almost a Kraken. Sadly didn't get it. If the North Carolina hadn't shot down the Iowa, I would have gotten my Kraken, but I can't blame him because he might have saved my life as well, so that was probably a good thing. Team score wise, well, 2,100 base XP on a loss is certainly a good result, but it was not enough to carry us across the finish line, so not much else I can do there. Looking at the detailed report, not surprisingly, it's mostly torpedo focused. 182,000 torpedo damage and 25,000 flooding damage, but not to be underestimated, my guns did 37k and another 21k in fires. So don't underestimate the use of your guns. That's quite a lot of gun damage added into the total. If I hadn't been using my guns at all, this would only be a, what do we say, 207k damage game. So the difference between using your guns and not using them is a big deal. Ultimately though, it was a loss, nothing I can do about it, but this game did kind of show this slightly improved torpedoes, scoring some hits where you don't expect to score hits, or get it. Usually when you might expect to get one hit, you might instead get 2 hits. The buff is small, but I do consider it to be noticeable, and I do think that most Shimakaze players should enjoy this slight buff to the torpedoes, because that's something a lot of them have been wanting for a long time. Anyway, since I haven't covered the Shimakaze in a while, I will move on to my recommended build for this ship. Right, since it's been a while since I covered the Shimakaze build, I'll go over it again. But I have been using mostly the same build through multiple patches since 0.60, I think. Starting off, modules, of course, we want to get the Type 93 Mod 3 torps as quickly as possible. The default 20 km ones are awful, for the simple reason that the torpedo detectability range by sea is 2.5 kilometers, which means they are easily spotted. They're not very fast either. We want the Type 93 Mod 3. These are the ones that get the most buffed in this patch as well. As you can see, the torpedo detectability is 1.7 km on these, and I consider them the best choice for the current meta. Consumable wise, priority 1 would probably be premium smoke, followed by premium repair and premium speed boost if you can afford it. Upgrade wise, main armaments mod 1, you don't want to lose turrets or torps. Accuracy for your guns, and torpedo tubes traverse speed, which is pretty good if someone rushes your smoke. Torpedo tubes mod 3, faster torp reload since you are a torp boat and that's still your primary armament. And here, engine boost mod 1. Use the Clash of the Elements coins to buy these if you need additional ones, or hopefully you got one from ranked, as I recommended as well, because this is one of the most useful new upgrades in the game. I think I have 4 or 5 of these, and I'm using it on multiple different ships. Very good. Increases the engine boost duration by 50%, so instead of a 2-minute speed boost you have a 3-minute speed boost. Rudder shift, and finally concealment. Captain perks wise, priority 1, preventive maintenance, don't want to be losing turrets, but most importantly, don't want to be losing torpedo tubes. Last stand, I'm going through these in order of priority if it was a new captain. Last stand and survivability expert, followed by concealment expert. These are the first 10 points. Once you get to this point, we can start branching out. On all torpedo boats, Adrenaline Rush is very good, because of course if you get chunked to very low HP, you can almost get a 20% increase in reload, which makes this insanely strong, even stronger than torpedo armament expertise, which is only 10%. And I would actually recommend getting RPF before finally getting torpedo armament, because RPF is what will keep you alive, and being alive and actively dodging enemy DD hunters is going to be more valuable than the 10% faster reload, because, well, staying alive means you can launch more torps. So ultimately, of course, when you have all these kicking in like this, you saw how fast my reload was on the torpedoes in the game, and it creates a very good synergy. You have a lot of survivability, but you also have a lot of torpedo focused damage, which is of course the whole idea with the build. You want to focus on the strengths of the Shima. Anyway, that was my Shimakaze 0.6.4 commentary. I hope you guys enjoyed it.